Okay, so in this video, I'll just quickly introduce deep learning and how it was actually conceptualized. And then from the next video onwards, I'll get into the mathematical details behind neural nets and deep learning. So deep learning is basically a field of AI which takes its inspiration from how the neurons or the neural networks in the brain are structured. So the neurons in your brain is basically something like this. You have a nucleus, right? You have a nucleus, you have axon, okay, which is sort of like a long tail, and then you have dendrites coming in from other places, right? Uh, Dendrites. So this is the nucleus. The dendrites bring in some signals and it's taken into the nucleus where some calculation is done and the output is given through the axon, and this axon goes to another nucleus or another neuron, right? So that's how the neural network, so that's how the neuron in the brain is structured. Now this is exactly how, so to build deep learning, scientists took inspiration from this structure of the neuron. So they were like, what if I give a weight to every input, right? And I do some calculation here. I add a function on it and I give the output to other neurons as well. Okay, there might be 100 different neurons and give an output to other neurons as well. So that's how deep learning generally works. You have inputs. Let's say each one of these uh, inputs is x1, x2, x3, x4. Okay, so I give the weight to each of these inputs to sort of amplify the effect of one input or diminish the effect of another input. So this becomes like a weighted average. So if I have to write the mathematical expression of this is summation, right? I'll write w1 x1 plus w1 x2 plus w1 x3 plus w1 x4. Sum them up because there's a summation here, and then you apply a function on it. Okay, you apply a function on it to model the output. So this function is called the activation function, right? And this gives an output that is sent to other neurons as well. Okay, so that's how deep learning is. Now, if you have lots of these neurons, suppose you have inputs, okay, and then you have, let's say, you have more and more neurons. So because you have so many neurons, right? This is the input. This is the hidden layer, which is layer one and layer two. This is called the hidden layer. This is the output, right? So this is called a deep neural net because there are multiple layers for your neurons. You have one layer, you have a second layer, then third layer, and so on and so forth. So that's why this is called a deep neural network because it's deep, there are lots of layers in it. And these layers in the middle between the input and the output, they're called hidden layers, right? So that's in general how deep learning tends to work. This is super simplified and it was actually inspired from the biological neuron in our brains, right? So basically, this algorithm of deep learning was an idea of someone called Geoffrey Hinton, who I think is still a professor at University of Toronto. And he came up with an algorithm to connect neurons in a computer and modify their weights and uh, their weights dynamically. That algorithm is called backpropagation. Okay, we'll see backpropagation in more detail in one of the next videos, but just keep this in mind that backpropagation is nothing but chain rule, chain rule from your differentiation, derivative, and memoization. Okay, so that's what backpropagation is. Backpropagation is an algorithm that helps you dynamically change the weights over here, so as to tune your neural net to perfectly, to match the output that you require from it, right? So Yeah, that's what deep learning is all about.